of the internet. This is Reynolds Retouching, and I want to share with you a special camera, one I've used quite a bit. And you may not know it, but you're actually inside a terrarium right now. You may have thought you were looking through a terrarium, but you're actually inside one, thanks to the Nikon AW1. And I'm going to tell you all about this exciting camera.
This camera has been to Jamaica and back, up and down Canon Mountain in minus 20-degree wind chill, in a backpack on a chairlift, to the top of Mount Chocorua, and 30 feet below the ocean surface on a coral reef. It's been on dirt bikes, motorcycles, and ATVs, and it's been submerged in deep puddles. This camera is, hands down, the most versatile camera you will ever own. Now what about features? Most important is the sensor size, not the megapixel count. Nikon 1 series cameras use a CX format, or 1-inch sensor. The AW1 has 14.2 megapixels. To show you why megapixel count is not the end-all be-all, here is a shot from the AW1 at 100% next to a file from the 12 megapixel full-frame D3 at 100%. And here they are at 200%. The lower megapixel D3 blows the AW1 out of the water in terms of noise and clarity. It's no contest. But let's get past the disappointing CX format and accept that a larger sensor would also be more expensive, so let's dive into some other features. It's important that I can control the aperture, shutter speed, and ISO manually, and Nikon has provided a way to do this. It's not necessarily intuitive, but it works. When the camera is set to manual, this plus-minus control will switch between aperture and shutter speed, while these two buttons will control whichever you have selected. A dial would have been nice, but I don't know the difficulties of engineering this thing to be watertight, so let's just accept that this is how it operates and move on. To change ISO, you'll need to go into the menu settings. Now I want to show you one of the coolest things about this camera, and actually a deciding factor in its purchase. Look at this brilliant flash mechanism. How did they make that watertight? But what's really important about it is that it can be aimed at the ceiling almost effortlessly. Seriously, I do it all the time. Or go to portrait orientation and shoot it at the wall for soft side lighting. Now keep in mind, the camera must be set to manual for this to work. Otherwise the camera will attempt to compensate for the expected flash and dial down the aperture, making your images underexposed. But how do you focus? Nikon provides autofocus full-time, autofocus single, auto area, single point, and subject tracking. My focusing is almost exclusively autofocus single and single point. Simply hover the point where you want it, push down halfway on the shutter, and move to reorient the frame. Pretty simple. Submerging the camera can only be done using the 11 to 27.5mm lens and O-ring provided. You obviously don't need the O-ring unless submerging the camera, but just imagine what would happen if you forgot to secure the O-ring before submersion. Not good. Also, make sure there's no sand, grit, or hair that could prevent a proper seal. You should also use the silicone gel provided. Oh, and this screen will pop up every time you turn on the camera, informing you of these things. It's going to get really annoying, especially when you need to be ready fast. Now let's talk about the video capabilities of this camera. It will shoot HD video at 1920 by 1080p at 60 frames per second, as well as other frame rates. You can actually see it being used in my video about the history of camera modes at the 3-minute and 5-second mark. As for slow motion, it will do 400 frames per second or 1200 frames per second at a significantly reduced quality. Note that even the 400 frame quality is not HD quality. But aside from spending thousands of dollars on a specialty slow motion camera, it does a pretty good job. For a fantastic portrait lens, mount the 32mm f1.2. This lens is not cheap, but as you can see, the quality is fantastic. Given the CX format, it's an 86mm equivalent. This is the ultimate lens for low light photography. Although, if you're used to full-frame sensors, you'll probably notice some noise in the shadows. And back to resolution, I designed this Jamaica album at 7 inches, which would give me a 14-inch spread. 14 inches is pretty big for the AW1. Imagine a 14-inch print on the wall. You probably wouldn't want to go larger than an 8x10. I see this camera rated 4 stars all over the internet, and I think that's about right for many intents and purposes. But for my own situation, I give it 5. 5 stars because I can't scuba dive with a D3 or a D800, not without an expensive housing, and a GoPro can't zoom or accept that 32mm 86 equivalent lens. I'm not going to take an SLR down a water slide, not even with a housing. Imagine that thing hitting you in the face, or someone else. So the AW1 is really unique. There's nothing like it. You know a good camera when you take it with you. And when I visit the Southwest this summer, I'll be taking my new D800 and also the AW1. But now there's talk of Nikon's V4, and will it have a full-frame sensor? If so, perhaps they'll make an AW2, and perhaps that will have a full-frame sensor. It would definitely be hard to resist. Well, I hope you enjoyed my review of the AW1, and as you can see, I've shared some of its pros and cons, and I hope that will help you in your decision making. But it's a big decision, and for many it will mean committing to a new platform and new lenses. When for just a little more money you could have near professional quality with a DSLR. That's a tough call, but the most I can do is inform. And with that said, this is Reynolds Retouching, and thanks for watching.